We all love statistics, but they don't love us back. Indeed, if you pay too much attention to the statistics in the media, you're the victim of an abusive relationship, the victim of a system that's designed to affect your perception one way or another, depending on the motivation of the person who's passing the statistic on to you. Like an unprotected lover with an unwanted virus. But if you'll give me a few minutes, we'll get you an oral vaccination. After all, you've come to take the gold pill. The two major parties in the media can no longer be expected to represent our interests. They control the information we receive in order to keep us comfortable with their profits and with their power. Comfort is not what I offer, only the truth, nothing more. We assign a great deal of importance to statistics. They seem to convey a certain amount of credibility to the person who uses them, don't they? Oh, he uses facts and figures, not just opinions. I should listen to him. Statistics make us feel like we're in the presence of real knowledge, more willing to trust. But the thing about statistics that I want to talk about today is their context. Most importantly, the people giving you the statistics themselves. Let me start out with a simple example. If my son says, wow, this protein powder has 19 grams of BCAA in every scoop, I have no idea whether that's a lot or not, but for the fact that he apparently seems to think so. I know that BCAA are good for me, and I know that he's looked into the matter. He's a smart guy, so I might try the stuff, even though I really have no other way of knowing whether 19 is a lot or not. My reaction literally would not have been one bit different if the number were not 19, but say 12, or 5, or 893.136. Statistics are a lot like other products. There are producers, there are distributors, and there are consumers. Producers are people who use statistical analysis as a part of the scientific process because they're trying to understand something better. Most of the stats we use in public policy come from social scientists. And there's something you should know about social scientists. They're human. Most social scientists have biases, preconceived notions about what the results ought to be. And so even in academic settings, social scientists typically lack the discipline necessary to accept what it is that the statistics are actually telling them. So it's easy to disregard results that go against their prior beliefs. This, of course, is what's commonly referred to as confirmation bias. Because of bias and a variety of other challenges in conducting statistical research, especially in the social sciences, we can only begin to understand something after many research projects have been completed, and by many different people. What I refer to as distributors are people who communicate statistics in order to make their case, as is typically done in political settings. Because there are so many different statistics from which to choose on any given subject, it's easy to shop around for the ones that help distributors make their case, help politicians make their case. And then there's consumers, like the rest of us. We read statistics out of curiosity, trying to educate ourselves, and sometimes to pass on statistics to others. Journalists are usually both consumers and distributors in the sense they're trying to figure out the significance of statistics at the same time that they're passing on the significance to us. Very few journalists have any idea what the numbers actually mean, how they were generated, how they should be applied, or what their limitations are. Of course, many journalists don't even try to understand the stats they use. They're often quite comfortable choosing those particular statistics that reinforce their own biases and those of their audience. When we assign greater weight to a statistic than to something we know is merely an opinion, we leave ourselves at the mercy of those we trust to give us the statistics. And because those we trust are increasingly motivated to reinforce our own biases, we become victims. And because we're the ones who choose our distributors, we choose the media that we decide that we want to listen to, we are in some sense really victims of our own device. we must realize that statistics are no better than any other opinion, because it's merely someone's opinion to choose that one statistic to share with us. My advice is this: let's care about what we care about because we care about it. Let's not let others tell us what's important for us to care about. And let's especially not let somebody tell us what's important on the basis of statistics. So here's another example. Think about the following question. Is 11 a big number or a small number? Hard to say, you might say. It depends. Compared to what? All right, let's say 28. 11 compared to 28. Well, then 11 seems small. But what if I were to say 28 were the number of children in a classroom and 11 were hurt by a tornado? Well, now 11 seems kind of large. Now, what if I tell you that 26 of the kids went to the hospital, but we don't know the status of 15 of them because they were turned away for lack of insurance? Now 11 seems pretty small. Now, what if I say that your child is one of the 11? Now 11 doesn't seem so small anymore, does it? The point is this. It's not just the context that matters, but the reason for the context to be described at all. The person choosing the context, the person who has the reason to choose the context, the person who has reason to choose a motivation to tell you the story is more important than the number itself. At any point in the story, think about this. Would it have been any different at all if the number were 5 instead of 11? The story would have been the same. Would it have mattered if the number were 17 instead of 11? No, not at all. And so when the question is 11 a big number or a small number? The answer is simply no. It's not a big number or a small number. Numbers have no size. Numbers have no meaning. Numbers have no importance whatsoever, except for the importance that we give to the numbers. Different example. A percentage. How about 90%? Big number or a small number? I once sat in an oncologist's office while it was explained to me that my son had a 90% chance of beating his cancer. That was probably the small number I'd ever heard. Thank God he turned out to be in the 90%. But I believe that for the rest of my life, that will always be 90%, the smallest number I've ever come across. We all need to be aware of why it is that we believe the things that we do. We get our news from a source that we picked because we agree with what it is that's being said more often than we agree with what is being said by other sources. Dangerous stuff, huh? What if we found out that the statistics behind some of our beliefs were wrong? Would that mean that we shouldn't care about the topic anymore? Let's try another example. Communications director at an organization of which I used to be an economist at the time was patiently listening to my complaints about how the press had mangled the statistics in a story about a topic in which I personally had some expertise. In fact, I had worked with the reporter, and I was disappointed by how the story came out. She reminded me that journalists, even when they do the best they can, even when they're in the trade press and they have some familiarity themselves, are unlikely to comprehend the implications of many statistics. Much less in the general press, at least in the trade press, they know what the topic is. Then she said something that I'll never forget. Now that you're aware how difficult it is to obtain accurate information from journalists in an area in which you know they're failing because you have some expertise, how do you feel about all of the other areas covered by the media where you don't have any expertise at all? Think about that. Here's a riddle for you. When the clock strikes 13, what time is it? You might say 1 o'clock. But you know that it's supposed to chime one time, the clock is, when it's 1 o'clock. The answer is you don't know what time it is. All you really know is that you have a broken clock. And by the way, now that you know your clock is broken, how do you feel about what you thought was true when the clock struck, say, 4? In other words, when your clock strikes 13, not only do you not know what time it is, you don't know what time it ever was. But it's hard to change our minds, isn't it? Think about some of the numbers that we learned a long time ago and have had a hard time letting go. For example, how many planets are in the solar system? Another example. One day, many years ago, when I was a young economist, I was all worried about the accuracy of some number that I was working on. And I bristled at the pressure that was being brought to bear to get some rushed calculation accomplished, finished. A lobbyist with whom I was working just wanted to get a number, any number, to bring it up to Capitol Hill to help him make his case. He didn't care about my carefulness. Isn't accuracy more important than speed? I said, thinking that would end the argument in my favor right then and there. No, he said, looking at me like I was from Mars. The lobbyist taught me something that was very true, maybe unfortunately true. First number wins. Your number could be more thoughtful, more vetted, more valid, more reliable, more correct. But if your number gets to the newspapers in, say, April, and my number gets to the newspapers in, say, March, you lose. And you lose big and for a long time. People are impressed by a fresh statistic, something new, fresh insight, fresh thinking. Statistics are like would-be boyfriends. They only get one shot at a first impression. So again, think about some of the statistics that you have a hard time letting go. How many teams are in the Big Ten? Who gets paid more on an hourly basis for doing exactly the same work? Men or women? How do we know what it is that we think we know? How do we come to believe the things that we believe we believe? And of course, one of my favorite questions, having worked with statistics for many, many years, do they matter at all? Let's try another example. Is there more racism on average, as evaluated by social scientists, inside the United States or outside the United States? Try this question. Inside the United States, is there more racism on average among police officers or in the general public? However you answer each of these, whatever it is that you believe, you should ask yourself, how did I come to believe this? Have you ever walked through a white neighborhood in the middle of the night as a young black man? Have you ever worked as a police officer or with a police officer, ridden in a police car for a shift? What about the data on racism? I used to spend a lot of time analyzing data on bank lending in the context of racism. Is it possible to find evidence of either racism or a lack of racism in bank lending? No. No, it's not. Can you find evidence of either racism or a lack of racism in data in bank default rates? No. No, you can't. Housing data? No. Hiring data? No. Hourly pay data? No. Salary data? No. Does any of this mean that there is not racism? No. Of course it doesn't. Does any of this mean that there is racism? No. No, it doesn't. Think about this example. The number of unarmed black men killed by police each year, is it going up or is it going down? Ask yourself not just why you've come to believe what it is that you believe. Why do you care? Does it matter? If we were to learn that the number were going down, would it make any difference in any case, even a single case? Would it make it less important? Would even one case be any less deserving of a thorough and transparent investigation? Would a statistical decline imply less need for police training, police transparency, police accountability? I'm a police officer. I've had to tell people that they have lost a loved one, including cases in which it was the result of gun violence. Imagine how well that conversation might go if I were to try something like this. Wow, good thing this doesn't happen as often as it used to. I'm not impressed by statistics that try to minimize a problem. Nor, to be frank, am I impressed by statistics that try to amplify a problem. Crime is crime. Injustice is injustice. Even at an aggregate level, at a public policy level, imagine, for example, how well the conversation goes with the city commissioners when you say, hey, we're not too worried about homicides in town this year. Last year they were 20% higher. Or when you tell your friends in the detective bureau, hey, homicides are up 20% this year. Thanks. But if you find that very helpful, maybe you're a bit crazy. I figure 38% of you already think I'm crazy, and you're probably 80% right. But one of the 16% of things in life that I truly understand is statistical deception. And I wouldn't lie to you, at least not more than 2% of the time. 86% of all statistics are made up right on the spot, including 92% of these. Which of the statistics that I have shared with you today are the 8% that are actually correct? I'm 90% sure that it doesn't really matter. Because there is an old saying in politics, I won't care what you know about until and unless I know what you care about. If you ever trust anything I have ever suggested, let it be this. Let's care about each other, both in small numbers and large, just a little bit more. And let's claim that we know with statistical certainty how to fix each other, just a little bit less. This won't be easy. Politics has become a battleground. On one side of this battle are 60% of politicians and 65% of pundits, 70% of journalists, I figure 75% of jurists, 80% of revisionists, 99% of regulators, who believe that the government is better able to solve your problems than you are yourself. On our side of this battle are things like science, history, people like you, people like me, and common sense. Thanks for helping me make this sense 2.3% more common. Thanks for coming to take the gold pill. It has 19 grams of BCAA. Comfort is not what I offer, only the truth, nothing more.